Eddie, before we get started, the format of the meeting. So we'll do
You're the only one on.
like the only thing that we need from tonight, and we can, when we start the meeting, is just start a vote on it.
So after you give your presentation.
We'll give the presentation, talk about it.
Mhm.
If you guys have comments or concerns.
Eddie, yeah, I'm trying to, maybe you might have, never mind, I might have to go get them.
Then we'll work through
Yeah.
whatever it is, and then get a vote.
Okay.
And then probably, do you guys issue like a resolution from your first committee, or does it have to go forward?
We'll have to go to the full board after we, okay.
And then but we don't normally present at the whole board.
I don't know. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't.
But some committee boards present to the parks committee, get a letter.
Okay, so before we begin the meeting, we would like to let everyone know this is being recorded. So anything that is said in the chat or in line can be forwarded at a later date. Okay, all yours, Jeff.
Okay, first, I'd like to welcome everybody here to the Parks Committee meeting. It's Wednesday, October 18th at 7 o'clock. This meeting, the agenda tonight is review the in-progress design for a portion of Brighton Second Street Playground, and also the update on the West Street Playground Public Restroom Building. First, I'd like the Parks Department people to introduce themselves to everybody. Just go down the line.
Great. I'll start. Good evening, everybody. My name is Davey Ives. I'm the Chief of Staff for Operations. A lot of you guys know my boss, Commissioner Marty Marr. He couldn't be here tonight, but he sends his regards. I'm just happy to be here. I will give it to Jessica.
My name is Jessica Arias. I'm one of the designers working on this park as a consultant to the Parks Department, and I'm here with my colleague, Carmen.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carmen. I'm a designer in Woodscape.
Hi, this is Samir Roy, project landscape architect with New York City Parks Capital Project.
And Jeff, I should also say that Larry Major is on the.
Yes, Larry Majors is on the line. Say hello, Larry.
Hi, Lawrence Major, Larry Major, Regional Manager, Brooklyn South. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Okay, you can start your presentation.
Okay, so I think with that, Eddie, you have the ability. So Eddie's going to share it on the screen, and then Jessica from Scape is actually going to run through the presentation. I think should take about like 10 minutes, 12 minutes. So we will keep Jessica to that.
Yes.
But then obviously open it up for questions. And, you know, the thing that we're looking for tonight is if the board is on board with it, the Parks Committee is on board with it, some sort of vote of approval that we will, after this point, we will take to the Public Design Commission for approval. That would be obviously after a full board approval from Community Board 13. And then from that point, the schematic that we're going to see tonight would be approved. And then Samir, Jessica, and Carmen will develop that into kind of a more comprehensive design. And by comprehensive, I mean like all the specs and benches and specific things that are in it so that we can actually take that and put it out to bid to start the procurement process. Then we get a contractor on board. Then we start the construction process. So great. So Jessica.
Great, thanks. Well, thanks for having us. We're really excited to be here to talk about the redesign of the sports area of Brighton Playground. So just going to the next slide here, we're going to start off by talking about our design goals, which these design goals were informed by you and by members of your community. We heard the things that you said in May at the public meeting. So the first goal is to provide the community an updated, inclusive, accessible, and sustainable park. The next goals tell us a little bit about how we're going to do that. We're going to upgrade the sports courts for multiple uses for other sports and other types of park uses. We want to improve site permeability, add softscape, and increase shade to regulate the temperatures in the park, to make it comfortable for seating and for playing sports, and to provide more opportunities for passive recreation and seating. We also want to increase habitat and native planting, keeping in mind the location of this park as right on the beach, thinking about sustainability and, long-term climate change and the habitat in the area. So as you know, on the next slide, the park is located adjacent to the Coney Island Boardwalk in this neighborhood. And on the next slide, very quickly, we can see that in the year 2050, this site has a 1% annual chance of being completely flooded like this. So we want to dwell on this. But on the next slide, current day, moderate flooding events, storm events, the site as it's designed now is not prone to flooding. But during extreme rain events, which we can see on the next slide, there is quite a bit of flooding on the south end of the park. So this is something we'll be taking into consideration as we present and develop the design. On the next slide, just quickly, as you know, the park is surrounded by a residential community. So we want to maintain and enhance that character of it being a neighborhood park. And on the next slide, a brief overview of what we have in a walking radius of a half mile around the park. The other park and open space amenities include lots of children's playgrounds and quite a few handball courts. But really, this park is very unique in that it provides sports opportunities for people in the community, and will be adding some other things, hopefully, too, that will serve this multi-generational user base. So on the next slide, just as a reminder of what the park looks like now, in that black dashed outline, you see the area where we'll be working. I think the first thing that stands out to me when I look at this is that there is a lot of asphalt and not very many trees. So it's very hot in the summer and very cold in the winter. And there is some planting, some ground cover planting that needs an update. And let's see, in the center of the park, we have an existing seating area that's very much enclosed by the other uses around it, so it's a little bit crowded. And on the next slide, this is an inventory of all of the trees that are currently in the park. So we can see we have some great street trees along Brightwater Court that welcome people to the park. But again, inside the park, there is not much shade. And looking at the next slide, just looking at a little bit of analysis here of the current park conditions. There are a few issues to look at. One is on the south side, like I mentioned, there is some poor drainage, so sometimes there's a little bit of standing water. So we want to think about how to prevent flooding there, and also at the north end. Another point that we've heard is that from the center of the park is a view west straight into the back of the apartment blocks on the adjacent lot. So we've heard from the community that the neighbors would like screening and a little bit of separation from the park and their homes.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll just move through these a little bit quickly, but these are photos of the site, the way it looks now. So on the left, you see lots of fence that greets visitors. It's not as welcoming as it could be. And on the right side, we see these beautiful street trees along Brightwater Court. And on the next slide, here we have two views of the entry garden as it stands now. It's quite underutilized. There is not a lot of shade, and it's not a very comfortable place to sit as it is now. And on the next slide, we can see, thanks, the adjacent apartment blocks there. So, you know, as it is now, we're looking almost right into people's windows. So there is definitely an opportunity here to provide a little bit of buffer and separation. On the next slide, on the left, we can see there's a sort of a creepy view of the underside of the Coney Island Boardwalk. And on the right, there is the existing conditions of the asphalt. It's cracking a little bit. Some of the color is fading. So we'll be looking to update that. And on the next slide, a little bit of the same thing. We see some discoloration and just some cracking in the asphalt. On the next slide, we can see two views, east and west, in the park of the central circulation corridor. This is something that's a very strong gesture that makes it easy to navigate the park. So this is something that we'll be looking to maintain and improve. On the next slide, yes, on this one, on the left, we can see the existing seating area, which is enclosed by the other uses. It's very crowded in this picture, and at different times of the day, it does have really great shade, and I suppose that's probably why people like to sit there. On the right side, we have a view of the connection to the boardwalk. Okay, and moving on to the next slide is something very exciting, which is the proposed redesign of the park. So the first thing you'll see here is that one of the basketball courts has been replaced with a new basketball court with a walking track around it on the south side of the park. There's also now a volleyball court and a pickleball court.
Beautiful.
Great. We think so too. We also have, in addition to that, an adult fitness area, which I will show you a little bit more about in detail in a moment. Thinking about the circulation of the park, how people get in and out, we're maintaining that connection to the playground area, but creating a little bit more natural flow from the entrance by lining that circulation area with shade trees and lots of seating to be able to sit comfortably, to people watch as people walk in and out of the park, and also to watch sports and enjoy nature. You'll see there's a light green color around the perimeter of the park. This is something that we're calling a forested edge. So we can imagine dense planting with lots of different heights and levels and textures. So this will provide lots of stormwater management and some screening from the adjacent apartment blocks. You'll also notice the bright colors of the sports courts. This color palette is something that we like to call beach pixels. We are very inspired by the neighborhood context, by the colors of the sand and the sun, and a coastal plant palette that we'll be planting in this park. The other thing you'll notice here is that the existing seating area is turned into a rain garden, where there will be planting that provides stormwater management and is an interesting focal point throughout the year. Okay, so moving on to the next slide, we'll look at some more details. This diagram shows the fencing. So we talked about how there's very tall chain link fence now. This will be replaced with a lower steel fence so that there's good sight lines in and out of the park. And on the next slide, we'll look at the adult fitness area. So there are 5 pieces of new adult fitness equipment that provide a variety of exercise opportunities for people of different ages and abilities. And on the next slide, there is a picture of what these will look like. So at least 2 of these are fully ADA accessible. They all have ADA accessible components. So these will be very easy to access for all kinds of users, and young users and older users, and widely accessible. And looking at the next slide, This is a little bit of information about the materials and colors we'll be using. So the 4 big color swatches you see are the colors of the sports courts, as well as permeable concrete pavers that'll be placed where all of the new trees are located, sort of in the center of the park. Down in the bottom left, we have the safety surface that'll be located where the adult fitness is. And the 2 little colors on the left are the colors of the adult fitness. And moving on to the next slide, a couple of things to note here. This is the site furniture up in the top left. You'll see the benches that will be located in the park, which are the same ones that you see currently on the boardwalk. And on the right, the Flushing Meadows light pole, which we will be locating sort of in that central pedestrian circulation area for safety. And on the next slide, this is just a sample of some of the coastal plant palette that we'll be using. So you can see lots of colors and textures and heights to provide interest and habitat. And these are plants that are used to the harsh environment of the beach and the city. And on the next slide, again, on the left, you'll see some trees that will provide shade, and on the right, rain garden planting that has lots of color and texture that will be interesting to look at throughout the year. And on the next slide, this is a little bit of a description about the sustainability of the site. The left is before and the right is after. So we are increasing the amount of permeable surface in the park to absorb stormwater and distributing it across the site so that we can plant more shade trees. And on the following slide, this is a view when you walk into the park. This is what you'll see. The adult fitness on the right, basketball court beyond, and with a walking track around it. And way off in the distance there, you can see the Coney Island boardwalk. And on the next slide, this is a view looking north towards Brightwater Court. So close to us, we can see pickleball players, and then just beyond that, the volleyball court. And of course, lots of shaded seating here for different groups, and the rain garden just beyond. And the next slide is actually the last slide. So thank you very much for your comments.
Okay, appreciate the presentation. It's very detailed explanation of what's going to be at the park. I'd like to open up now. Anybody from the Parks Committee have any questions? I'll start with Fran.
When are you going to, if it is approved, when would you be renovating the area?
So we're in the design phase now. Design typically takes about a year, so we started in May. So May of next year, we would start the procurement process, and probably the following.
This is 18 months.
This is an 18-month project.
Because we had the DEP sweep.
Okay, because so our design is a little bit longer, but probably we'd be, so that's, we're in 23 right now. So it would go into procurement 24.
Yes.
And so sometime, I would say late, very late spring, summer, it could start
Are you
construction.
going to launch the park?
We will not enlarge the park. We've actually managed to cram in all those elements into the same footprint. Yeah.
I love the way you use every square inch.
Yeah.
To maximize the space and make it more efficient than what it was and user friendly than what it was.
Yeah.
And I think you did a great job. I can't wait to use it.
Cool.
I have to do a translation for this gentleman over here. He has a question. Whenever you're ready.
Yeah.
Hold on a minute. Yeah, no, let me start to see. I couldn't even do.
Okay,
While you're doing the translation, Ida,
Well, I'm gonna have, okay. If you're gonna speak, I'm gonna translate.
Listen, let's face it, this park was neglected and was terrible and needs improvement. but I think there's some things here that need to be tweaked. When you talk about habitat, when I see this, when I see isolated trees with pavers, this is not habitat. Okay? If you're gonna have trees, you should not have pavers in between. You should have shrub. You're talking habitat, and let me tell you, down here, it is, we are so bereft. We're on the Eastern Migratory Flyway. In warbass houses, they're getting yellow-bellied sapsuckers. They're getting all kinds of warblers. I'm getting hermit thrushes. We're getting merlins. There is so little habitat here that animals are just falling out anywhere. So every inch is becoming more and more precious. So if you're putting in isolated trees here, you should not be putting in permeable pavers. I would suggest you put in shrubbery down here, grasses, things like little blue stem. That would create far better habitat than this. I noticed now, I saw someplace though that you're using asphalt, I believe. Is there a way to replace that with permeable paving of any sort?
Can I just
Go ahead,
hop
go
on
ahead.
the first? Thank you, Ida. Appreciate it. I think just also, if you can also look at the barrier on the perimeter. I think Jessica
Yeah,
and Samir,
I
they
saw,
work
yes, that's
really hard to,
vegetated area.
you know, it's a small site, so we're trying to cram as much as
Okay,
we can.
exactly. And that's
And-
why you should look at those.
I appreciate it. I
areas.
think one of the concerns about putting shrubs between trees, we've
Mhm.
done it before.
Mhm.
And what happens is people just step into the planting bed and it gets trampled. So you're gonna, and so it'll go in as lush planting vegetation habitat. It'll turn out as compacted dust. And so that's what we're trying to avoid. So for
Can you
example,
put a
there's,
fence around
we
it,
are putting,
people from
we-
stepping on?
we are putting a fenced in area for a rain garden that hopefully adds in a little bit more, more habitat space,
What is this?
in addition to the perimeter area.
Okay, you know.
So
our
that
water
was our
table
approach.
here is very, very high.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
What happened in the heavy rains of a few weeks ago?
Yep.
The Seaside Park at the foot of Ocean Parkway
Mhm.
became a Dutch boulder.
Got it.
It turned into a lake.
Yeah.
And it kept a lot of stormwater from going onto our local streets. This park, the end of, along the boardwalk there, is at a slight dip.
Mhm.
And thank goodness we have pretty good drainage down here, so most of the buildings did not flood, even though we did flood during Sandy. I think you should try to make every inch permeable that you can.
I'll also mention that the view that you're looking at with the trees in the pavers, those are actually permeable pavers. So we're currently working with the civil engineers to have an under drain under those permeable pavers that'll route directly to the rain garden. So we're really trying to absorb a lot of water in those paver
There will be,
areas.
there will also be a retention chamber. So that's going to,
You're putting in a retention basin
there will be a
underneath?
retention basin that's going to hold some,
Yeah.
water if there's an extra runoff.
Okay, are you aware that when they initially, and Larry can help me out on this, when they put many, many years ago, a retention basin in Seaside Park, it filled with salt water from the ground. And at some point, correct me if I'm wrong, Larry, and at some point, some years later, they had to, because it had never been connected to the stormwater lines, they had to connect it to the stormwater lines.
Well, DEP is going to closely review it. They will go with the New York State and New York City guidelines. And we have hired an engineering company. They are looking into it. So they will be running all the tests, boring reports. Then only will make a final determination.
Okay, so just be aware, and, Larry can fill you in on
It's
that,
a good thing you just pointed out.
Yeah.
That's very good.
okay?
Before we move on to the Zoom questions, gentleman has a question?
No, говорите по-русски, я сейчас приведу, давай.
По строительным нормам,
Да.
это не я придумал,
Ага.
площадки нормы развернуть на 90 градусов.
He's saying that the construction, the platform, the construction, oh my God, the actual, yeah,
Okay.
has to be, you said, the 90 градусов что?
Развернуть.
It has to be turned 90 degrees angle.
Почему?
Why?
центральная линия любой площадки футбольной, баскетбольной, волейбольной, любой, должна идти с востока на запад.
Okay, I'm just gonna repeat. He says that he's talking about the basketball court, volleyball court, and pickleball court has to go from восток до east to west.
Потому что играют всегда больше вечернее время, и солнце не может мешать.
Meaning the way that they're turned.
The orientation.
They're right now on east west, you know.
They're on east west.
Yeah.
That's the orientation, that's the perfect orientation for, you know.
Они сейчас на east-west.
Сейчас это неправильно.
Yeah.
Правильно.
That's what you need,
Нет,
right?
это неправильно. И вы хотите делать,
Okay, okay, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
He's
you.
saying that he's saying that in order to access these grounds, to get the most use of, since during the winter months, that to grasp as much sunlight, that's the way it's supposed to
Got it.
play.
The sun's gonna be low in the sky.
Right,
Okay.
but they are facing that way, right? East, west?
They're
Yeah.
facing east
Okay.
west.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Eddie?
We have
Zoom question?
Great.
Yes, hi, thanks. So I have a few points. I'll go through them quickly. First of all, in the palette of plants, the trees, the shrubs, and the plantings, I didn't notice any milkweed, and that was specifically requested so that we can do something about the monarch population. I think even Mary appreciated that suggestion when I made it back in May. So is that something that's not possible, or is that something that was just not included?
This is just a preliminary plant palette, so thinking about milkweed and other pollinators and good habitat plants is definitely still a possibility. Thanks.
Okay, great. Let's keep that one on the table. Second,
you.
I noticed in the perspective on the pickleball court that you had the entire side open to the rest of the park. Pickleballs tend to travel quite a bit, and so you probably want to have some kind of screening there to make sure that people aren't chasing after the balls and the balls are not interfering with other park users. Second of all, a third of all, on the trash, is there any opportunity for recycling bins to be used in this park? I notice, especially in other parks, that big bellies and other containers are placed there specifically for recycling, and we don't have any recycling on the boardwalk at all. This might be a way of starting to introduce some to the area. And lastly, I was wondering, I know that you've given a lot of attention to increasing permeability, and Angela, who's also on the call tonight, can speak more to this, but has the heat island effect been considered at all for this area? We surprisingly have quite a problem along the boardwalk with the heat island effect, and we want to make sure that that's something that was also factored into the planning. I'll stop there.
Okay, so I'll talk about the heat island effect first. Yes, definitely. We've thought a lot about the current condition, which is just asphalt, which gets really hot in the summer. So that's part of the idea of that coastal plant palette that will really work on transpiration and evaporation to, sort of regulate those temperatures and, overall reduce the summer temperatures, across the site rather than just sort of on one side, the way it looks like it was planned in the current design. As far as recycling, Davey?
So yes, I addressed a numerous number of trees to address microclimatic conditions, because that's going to reduce the temperature drastically.
Yes.
Especially in the hot summer days. Right now is all empty. So we have added over
18
18 trees. So my question is so small. I think that's definitely going to improve the environment, when we consider microclimate or, heat island effect. And other than that, this question was about recycle.
I'll take the recycling. Craig, thank you for the recycling question. I think this is a broader parks question. I think we just put out recycling bins. Unfortunately, we also need to put out recycling trucks. It's a separate collection. So just with the capacity and staffing that we have, we don't have that capacity at the moment, and just the volume that we get. We've done some pilots in other parks on kind of a trial basis, and we found that actually the recycling that we get is actually quite mixed with garbage. So it's not actually sorted as well as we need to. We're trying to work with entities like Central Park to kind of learn lessons from how they do it. But at the moment, we don't have the resources for a separate additional trash collection route that would just do recycling. So
I think Brooklyn is the only borough that's not recycling in its parks.
I don't, that's
I
true.
don't know. That's
So,
not true. We did, just to add real quick, back
Yeah.
in 2005, when the Department of Sanitation was expanding its recycling and we picked designated locations. Levy was one location, Kaiser, but as Chief Ives explained, the public doesn't treat it as in the manner that we would all hope for, where people are putting in the proper bins, and we had 3 bins at each of these locations. And unfortunately, the moment you mix garbage with regular recycling, the Department of Sanitation treats us as a whole as garbage. So that program unfortunately doesn't work. We did a big belly attempt back in 2007 on the boardwalk, and unfortunately the same results were there. When we chose 2 locations at Stillwell and West 10th Street, the public was just mixing everything in, and we wound up taking these big cubes of compacted garbage and just throw them in a regular truck.
Just a point of information, I was on a Zoom from the Brooklyn Swab, and they were talking about the composting. And my idea was to have some composting on the beach and the boardwalk also, but it's just impossible to do.
it's kind of,
It's just impossible.
It's just
to do.
another, just think about all the trucks that have to drive past
Exactly.
and
So-
with the headaches that we're having already with Larry with the
But that's
smaller
what-
group.
That's where we're moving into, in the future.
Yeah.
In the future, you gotta think about those type of things.
Yep.
Okay,
Okay,
next.
next we have is Mary from the Councilwoman Protocol. Mary?
Hi, everyone. Hi, Davey. Thank you for this exciting presentation. I was going to bring up the milkweed because I remember that also. And in speaking of permeability, I agree with Ida. I think bushes would be well. And I remember Ida bringing up like tiny forests. I don't know if in our scoping meeting, I think that's really important. The one thing I saw in the presentation with the benches, I don't know if they were the World's Fair type benches or whatever. They didn't have any partitions in the middle of them. They were just flat. I'm just afraid they're going to become beds for folks.
I can speak to that. So actually, the majority of the benches here are ones with backs. There are 2 specific areas where we do have a backless bench. Those are along the side of the adult fitness area where people may want to sit on either side, either to face the path or to face the adult fitness area. And the same thing between the 2 courts, between the volleyball and pickleball courts, so people can sit on either side. And those backless benches are actually 4 feet long. So they're really not long enough for somebody to lay down. And then all the other benches that you see.
I disagree with that. I disagree with that. I think they will become people's beds.
Okay, thank you.
It can go.
All right, next week,
I would just rethink those.
Yeah, Mary,
thank you.
we can rethink it, and maybe there's a spec that has a barrier in the
Divider,
middle,
yeah.
a divider in the middle.
We can always.
let's
add
talk
divider,
with the-
if
with
we're
the
having,
manufacturer.
Usually if we go for 8 feet, we usually we call it scroll, so we just add the scroll.
Yeah,
And sometime, if it's a 4 feet, typically there's no room for
Yeah.
having scroll.
so maybe we can we'll work with the manufacturer, Mary. Yeah, and also a big thank you to the council member for making this project possible. I'm sorry for not mentioning it earlier.
Thank you.
Big thank you for funding this
I'll let her
and
know.
making it possible.
all right, next we have is Barbara Titlebaum, our chair.
Co-chair, babes, co-chair. Susan and I co-chair. What I wanted just to tell you guys is that I've been on this committee over 30 years as the head of the committee. And when you come with a design and we have things we like added or fixed, we really know what we're talking about because we're here. Now, especially Ida, when it comes to stuff like weeds, etc., you really should listen to her because she knows her business. And when we give a suggestion about putting a divider inside, we know our business. So please take everything we say, bring it back, and try to include everything in it because we live here and we know what's going
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have is Sarah. Sarah?
Hello. I'm Carl, and I go to the park and the basketball court 2 hours a day. And I noticed that in the swings area around the playground, there's a lot of people playing soccer. And on the basketball courts, there are a lot of people playing soccer. And there are already a lot of volleyball places on the beach. So I kind of think nobody would be playing volleyball. And we might be able to replace that with soccer grass or a goal. Because I think nobody would really use the volleyball because there's already one on the beach.
Mhm. That's Carl, thank you. And thank you for coming back again. I remember your comments. So we appreciate you taking 2 evenings to spend with us. I think that's totally valid. We definitely heard soccer. I don't know if you want to. I think, Carl, I think we could maybe think about maybe putting soccer lines in maybe on the volleyball court. So that you could bring a net, so that you could maybe take the volleyball net out and you could play with soccer. And maybe we could space the poles a little bit further out so that they wouldn't interfere with the soccer play.
Yeah, I think, Carl, the way we were thinking about the basketball area with the walking track is that it is flexible, so you could play lots of different kinds of sports there. I like the idea of adding grass to play soccer, but unfortunately, usually when we have grass in a place like this, it ends up dying and not being a very nice place to play soccer. So that unfortunately is not a great option for lawn.
I just want to say I appreciate Carl's advocacy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And once he turns 16, he can apply to the community board and be on the Parks Committee.
Yes.
I also think that maybe fake grass, because usually that would be the best grass to play soccer with. I understand. But maybe turf, because that also sucks up rain. Turf, it's better with rain, so the flooding in the area, like you said, would be sucked up with the turf. So
we can look into it. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you, Carl.
All right, the next one is Angela.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the presentation. I really like pickleball. I know that's fast growing sport in US. I'm not playing that sport, but thank you for adding it to the community. I would like to support Ida's suggestion to put plants around trees and bushes, not the permeable pavers, because we need to use as much space as we need for plants. And this place, even you added some planting, I don't know, but you probably add like 10%. It's still not enough to reduce the heat island effect, at my opinion. So if you have some plants around trees, it will help. Now there is also permeable covers for the sport area. I don't know if you're using that or not, but those exist. At least they let rain to suck in. It's not as good as permeable pavers, but it's better than asphalt. I don't know if it's something that you ever try to do. And then also adult exercise area. Is that something that was suggested by local residents? The only reason I'm asking, because we have adult exercise equipment few blocks away in Astor Levy Park. It's very popular, and if you have one, it's good. But if it wasn't suggested by local resident, maybe that's another opportunity to have a little forest there and to add more trees. Another thing, lights. I've noticed that in the evening, this area is very dark. I know there is a residential building around. Maybe some low lights will help, just so for safety. because when it gets dark earlier, like it is now at 7 o'clock, it's already dark, but kids still playing there. And yes, so to fight the flood, you said on the south side, there is a flooding that accumulates. And you can add trees there too as well. But I think what would help if you add a beach grass across the boardwalk in front of the park. It will create kind of dunes and it will create another barrier for water to come into the playground. That's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Chief, can I answer part of a question?
Sure, Larry.
Sure. So Angela, as you know, that area that's designated for the adult fitness area is also a problematic area. What the city council, the community boards, and ourselves have been dealing with is adults in the children's play area not using the space for the proper purposes. And there's gambling and drinking and stuff like that. That type of activity has been long worn out with us. And putting adult fitness equipment, especially when you're by the beach, is very welcoming. Folks that know that once they know it's there, the ones who use these proponents use it very well. They're very respectful with the space, and they're sometimes can be territorial to make sure that those who are not using it properly, they'll police themselves to discourage those from hanging out in those spaces. So that's one of the great things about adult fitness areas, and it's great for anyone at any age if they choose to use it.
Thank you, Larry. No, I'm not against it. I know the one that we have in our park is very popular. There is always people. So if there is will be there and needed, that's great.
I think it's a great exchange for what we're dealing with right now. It's a better solution.
Yeah, something that we've noticed about the park is that there really are people of all ages who use the park. And so I think that adult fitness is really a great opportunity for teenagers and adults and older people to, all be able to share the same amenity. I'll also address a couple of your other questions, comments, Angela, about lights. We are
very dark.
Yes, we are working with a lighting designer who will help us to create the right amount of light for safety, but not too much light to scare away, the birds or, create a nuisance for the neighbors. So that is something that is coming in the further details of the design. So we definitely share your concern. Thank you.
And I think also the light fixtures that we choose focus the light down so that it's not going up and getting to the night sky, and it's also not going into neighbors' windows. So it's keeping them up at night. Yeah, there is lighting. I don't know. There's
for nighttime use.
Yeah.
No.
It won't. Yeah, that's a great question, Dennis. I think it's not going to be bright enough for you to play basketball at night. So it's not like, like Madison Square Garden in your backyard. But it will be bright enough so that you can see someone, and it's designed for safety.
What time will the park open and close? Dusk to dawn?
We don't do dusk to dawn anymore. It's playgrounds are 6 a.m. and playgrounds close at 9. So the playground area will do. I think this will probably be open at 6 a.m. and then we'll close at 10 p.m. So
that particular park never closes.
yeah. So, I mean, the rules sign, that's what they state. So technically you're not allowed to be in the park. It's more from an enforcement perspective. So if there are people in the park, it gives kind of the police and our park enforcement staff the ability to go up and speak to people and say, hey, you can't be here.
10 p.m.
10 p.m.
That's taking
Next person, Eddie.
Residences all around the park.
The trees and
Yeah, do you want to cut to the flooding part?
oh, sure. Yeah. Angela, I just wanted to also address your comment about flooding, because this is something we're taking very seriously, which is why there's the perimeter planting that you see on the south and then on either side of the basketball court, because that south end is really the end of the park that catches a lot of water. So, we're in the process of looking at the existing drainage infrastructure there. And we actually want to create sort of a bioswale there so that it will be able to catch lots of water even though the the park actually is sloping sort of all down towards that area, that's a really sort of robust planting area. So we're looking at creating a swale and using native plants that are very much used to soaking up lots of water. That's definitely a concern that we share with you. So thanks for bringing that to our attention.
Yeah, one more hand.
Oh, this gentleman has a comment.
Yeah, we'll get to it.
Hi, Daddy.
Vadim?
Yes, that's the question.
We can't hear you.
Nadine? Are you on mute?
Yeah, he's on mute. If you can't talk, you can type your question in the chat and we can read it, okay? All right, so. Go ahead.
All right, let's move on to.
This gentleman, Amanda Ross, he has a comment. He was stating that on the volleyball, it was suggested that they put lines or whatever for football, that it could be a dual court. He's stating that that would be unfair because they have large crowds that do play volleyball and that they're already fighting wherever they can go with other players on different courts that's not designated volleyball. And he said if any place that would be good as a dual court would be the basketball court, since you do need a very large space for football, soccer, basically. Soccer is what I meant, I'm sorry. So he's obviously a very strong, this is the person who started volleyball with their, yeah.
Got it.
That's what I'm saying. Marty Mar knows who.
Yes, so maybe we can look at adding soccer lines or maybe even.
This is soccer fields on Bedford and Avenue X. I know it's far away, but that's a huge field. The entire
This
park.
doesn't have enough room to have anything in line of soccer.
Okay.
Yes, it's not like, I can just put few lines and people can practice. Not even people, not even children can practice soccer. This is too small for a soccer. You don't understand it.
Can Astro Levy be used for soccer?
Astro Levy can, yeah. I mean, it's an open field, so.
And by the way, folks, at Century Playground, we do have a junior soccer program, field designated right next to PS 100. And we also have in the back of PS 90, which is Neptune Playground. They're not full-size regulation, but they are good for young kids, young ages under the ages of 12.
Those were, Larry, those were the New York City Football Club.
That's
correct. Correct.
And they're well used and well programmed.
Well used and they're right just the blocks away, so.
I want to just weigh in on some of the things that other people have said here. Go ahead, you finished?
Yes, he's okay. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
The gentleman is saying that the courts, the volleyball court, that is, he's sticking to the volleyball court. The basketball courts, the way they are, they're north to south right now, correct?
They're east to west.
East to west.
Currently, they're now north to south.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Точно смотреть на воду и на юг, на север и на юг.
Что значит смотреть? Там глаз есть.
He's saying that it should be north to south facing the courts because почему? Потому что солнце because he's saying that the way it's positioned, if it's east to west, then it's going to whichever side is playing where the sun is hitting, it's going to be very difficult to play. I don't know.
No, the way.
Just translate.
No, that's
Thank you.
Thanks for trying to explain. Because the way.
The courts, the way they are positioned is correct. That's the correct way, but you're saying that's not.
This is, the way it's positioned is east to west. Okay, so throughout the day, sun keeps moving.
Of course.
Okay, so every time there's a game, every half of the game, they need to switch side. That's how it's making rational.
Солнце перечеркивается постепенно, да? И каждый раз сторона, они в одной игре, они должны менять стороны, чтобы быть.
Это строительные нормы, принятые во всем мире, признаны.
Okay. Everybody on the one. Angela, do you want to translate that part?
I understood, no.
Вы не специалисты.
Okay, пожалуйста. Пожалуйста.
Это не я придумал.
Okay.
Okay. He's saying that there are some worldwide norms to build those courts, which I'm not aware of, but maybe there is. I mean, what he's saying makes sense because If you face west, your team faced west, you will be blinded all the time.
Switch, right?
Yeah.
The whole point is to switch, right? That's what you're saying. The rationale is to switch every certain, right?
There are big trees. The reason we put it in there are existing big trees. So these trees are going to give a nice shade. So that's so, and also you got tall buildings around. So it's very unlikely there will be any issues. Yes, sun is, I mean, it's still tall building.
Okay, let's move on. Let's move on. Okay. Before we move on to the updates.
Excuse me, I had one more point here.
Take one more point.
Regarding the monarch butterflies, the New York Times had an article this past Sunday that the populations of monarchs have dropped 80% in the last 20 years. And we also need, so Craig's on the money with the milkweed. We also need seaside goldenrod because in the fall, you have goldenrod planted along the boardwalk on Surf Avenue, and it's just loaded with monarchs. So milkweed and goldenrod, okay? Going back to those pavers, okay? The area you're probably not aware of, but if you walk by, you might smell it. This park has a special name amongst dog walkers, which I will not mention here. Okay, just suffice it that the area is a popular doggy toilet. And if you have isolated trees like that with the pavers in between, that's just going to be another doggy toilet. So if you put in shrubbery, grasses or something, the dogs are, and if you put a fence, a little fence around it, people are not going to go climbing through it. Just like they put the fences around the tree pits on the sidewalk. Because otherwise this, I mean, everybody is going to bring their dog into the park and hello, look at this beautiful tree.
Good point. I just want to make a point.
Yeah.
It sounds very, very nice. The update is great for the community, for the kids, for the adults. But when it comes to building, after the building, what happens? We need the maintenance for this type of, to keep it in the right shape. So I think it's up to the, electeds to get the money in to the Parks Department. And we always have this issue. Okay, I just want to mention that.
Yeah.
Okay, before we move on to the update on the West Street, I'd like to get a motion for this design phase.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
What's the motion?
Excuse me, Jeff.
Yes.
I would like to have the motion say, motion to approve with considering the changes that the committee have brought to your attention.
Excellent point.
Yes, agreed.
Okay, so that's what the motion's gonna be, to approve this. To approve this basketball courts and fitness area with the caveat that you take into consideration the comments that the public has made tonight.
Yes.
Is that good? Okay, and second?
Second, and Fran second.
Okay,
There you go.
Okay, so
roll call.
my apologies. Dennis, you made the motion.
I made the motion. And
And
second.
Fran seconded. Joe Carase,
In favor. Yes.
Jeff Sanoff,
Yes,
Fran Schwartz.
Yes.
Dennis Verderis.
Yes.
Okay,
okay, it's, what, how many is it? 4 in favor?
yes,
Okay, no abstentions?
no.
Okay. Okay, no nos? Right? Okay, we will bring this to the full board at the October 25th meeting, is it, Eddie?
Wednesday.
Can I just ask one more question? On the pickleball court, will there be a permanent net?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Coming up, the guys that play there now,
Yeah.
they take their own nets. He asked me about that.
Do you, there's a question. Do you want a permanent net?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I assumed.
It's easier this way. we don't-
And you don't have to transport it and all this stuff.
Okay, let's move on to the update on the West Street Playground Public Restroom Building.
I think the update is we met with the contractor on site. And I think that as of, they are cleared to begin construction anytime after October 10th. So they are ready to start any day now. And that's the only update.
That's the update.
Yeah.
Okay, when do you think they'll be finished with this project?
Technically, they have a year to finish the construction. If I can be totally honest, I mean, I think building construction is a little bit more complicated. We've had buildings that finish in a year and then are waiting on approvals from the Department of Buildings or electrical or. Yeah, so I don't want to give you misinformation. You know, I think we hope that it's going to take a year and all the approvals can happen. It has been done before, so there is precedent for that. But I would just say take that with a grain of salt. They have to do, you know, Con Edison has to come in. DEP needs to sign off and the DOB needs to sign off before.
Where is this? Let's look, where is this in
West Street Playground.
West Street Playground.
Avenue Z and,
What second?
yeah, for that.
Avenue Z and West Second Street.
My chief.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, there's one more on the screen with that, that day.
Yes.
Hi, Vadim.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, I'm so sorry, you know, I tried to fix in the connection. I really appreciate your presentation regarding the playground, the park. I have a couple concerns, you know, which is I would like to bring to your attention, and it's up to you. You can make a decision after that. I completely agree with Mary that benches should have some kind of separation to avoid people to sleeping on those benches. It's absolutely correct. The other thing is, you know, as you can see from the photos what you provided, that's mostly Russian neighborhood. And the Russian likes to play chess and domino. And you don't have any tables to allow them to do that. You know, what's gonna happen, they're gonna bring their own tables and they're gonna block all the entrance to the park. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, so that's number one, you know, concern. The second concern is some noise from the park. What I live very close to the park, and the park's supposed to be closed at dusk. Is that correct?
Yes.
It's 10 p.m. 10 p.m. We used to do dawn and dusk, but now we do 6 to 10 for 6 to 10, or some parks are closed at 1 a.m. So, but 10 p.m. would be closing time. For this park.
As you can see, first of all, you know, the building is very close to the park. So when kids and adults is playing basketball and they hitting the ball over the ground, it's making a lot of noise. You know, and if you're gonna provide, you know, enough lighting in, then they're gonna play all night in that park.
Vadim, we're not going to provide enough light for them to play at night. I think that's the whole design behind the lighting for this design. And we're working with a team of engineers and lighting designers to make sure that it can happen. You know, basketball is one thing. Other activities I can't speak for that don't like, but yeah.
Okay, the other thing is, yes?
I'm sorry, I'll just add to with the comment with the noise. You know, this perimeter planting that we're designing, we're really thinking about screening in terms of visually, but also, you know, sound. So, you know, this is going to be very dense planting that, you know, plants really do a wonder to sort of buffer that noise. So that's definitely something that we're thinking about as we develop that.
One other thing on the.
Okay, so the other thing is, you know, what I understand, you want. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, the other is a little bit concerned, you know, if that park will be able to be locked after 10 p.m.
No.
So in reality, you don't have a control, you know, what's going to happen after 10 p.m.
No.
That's, you know, what we have What we
The
have
other
right
thing-
now, people is, using the park the entire night.
I mean, Vadim, there's also the Coney Island Boardwalk is also not locked. So, I think whatever's happening there can also happen at this small playground. We at the Parks Department just don't have the capacity, the manpower to open and close locks. And so from an enforcement perspective, it's kind of we would be spending our whole time just blocking and unlocking parks, and they'd be filled with trash and weeds and everything. More than they are now. So it would be massive gates. And you know what, from an enforcement perspective, from our last commissioner, actually, we've been trying to do a more open, and when I say open park, it's so that you can visually see into the park, so that from an enforcement perspective, and we've had conversations with our parks enforcement and with NYPD, a lower fence allows parks, the enforcement officers to see into the park to see if anything happens. So it's harder to hide in the park.
I agree with you on that portion, but if you're gonna put some bushes and trees, then from the street you cannot see what's going on inside in the park.
Vadim, I think that the planting is concentrated on the perimeter, and that's to buffer the buildings. So, and then it's going to be tucked under the boardwalk. So there will still be sight lines through the park.
I just, what I try to do, I try to bring to your attention, the problem can come up. That's all.
No, definitely valid points for sure.
Okay, we appreciate your questions and about the park, Vadim. Thank you very much. I just
You're
want
welcome.
to say, Ed,
Thank you.
I just want to say, with the approval, the community board will send out a letter to the Parks Department.
Great.
Okay,
Thank you, Jeff.
with the approval.
All right.
Okay, anybody else have anything else to say? No? Okay, it's 8:05, so I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you very, very much.
Great.
Jeffrey,
What happened?
you did not say all other.
What was that?
You did not say all other.
All other?
Or other?
All other, something new business, old business, all other
Okay.
business.
Okay. Is there any old business?
Jeff, I have something to say.
Go ahead, Barbara.
Larry, we had a terrible time with vendors on the boardwalk this year. I would like to have a plan in place before we go to next season where we can handle this and get this under control. So I'd like you to talk it over with everybody and see what you can come up so we can have a meeting where we can get something done for the future and make it easier.
Well, actually, and I understand, Barbara, and yes, we kind of take a little pride in ourselves because despite with the lack of lifeguards and where we had to place a lot of folks on the shoreline, we did working with CAU and with the Department of Sanitation and our park enforcement groups. And we've done a lot of between starting off with education and then later on became confiscation. And once confiscation was taking place, it actually had a nice effect on it, where the fact that it wasn't where they saw us and they just looked at us. When they saw us, they ran or they took cover or they got off the boardwalk. But yes, the problem still continues because whenever we take that enforcement on the boardwalk, it now pushes it to the businesses on the side streets and of course along Surf Avenue. So yes, it's a conversation that needs to be continued and looked at of how the enforcement can be acted, not just on the boardwalk, but throughout the streets of Coney Island, whether it's mobile or push carts. And, that's something we'll be willing to work with and willing to listen on ideas. But I think our folks did a pretty proactive time this year, despite, the lack of lifeguards and things like that, when we went out there and showed presence. It's not perfect. They're going to be there at points, when we're not there. And that happens a lot when we're gone after 9:30, 10 o'clock at night during the peak season and the amusement park districts and, see that action. But the fact that when we are during the hours of our operation, I think we were somewhat quite effective, folks ran into the aquarium property and they thought that was a line in the sand. And once we told, once we let the aquarium know that, there is no line in the sand, we were allowed to go in there, issue summonses, confiscate. And unfortunately, we had some arrests because of a disorderly, folks up their game and thinking that we couldn't do anything. And they wound up winding up in the 60th precinct, getting desk appearance tickets. So, a lot more needs to be done, but yes, the conversation should continue.
Yeah, I would like that very much. And also, part of the problem is when you're not there or when you're there and then they come back. So we need a long-term plan and maybe additional help, like they have additional help for the police. Maybe we can do something and once get it under control, it'll be better. But we need some real plan for this coming summer.
Okay.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you very much, Barbara, for bringing that up. And I want to make a special thank you for Larry Majors for sitting through this meeting and giving us some very, very good points. Anybody have any new business? Seeing nobody has any new business, I adjourn this meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Larry. Thanks for everything. Let's work together, get this done.
You're welcome. We'll talk soon.
Thank
Good night,
you so
everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Still looking.